Hi and welcome to this lecture. So now in this chapter, our main focus will be based on building line charts. So we want to know how can we build simple line charts, grouped line charts, and also how can we map aesthetics to different variables. We will also learn how can we modify things such as a line color, line type, as well as line size. Okay, so the dataset that we are going to use in this case is the dataset that is related to GDP growth. Okay, so this dataset is in gdp.txt file. So let's start. So we're going to say GDP and we're going to say read.csv, and this dataset is gdp.text, right? So let's look at this dataset, GDP. So if we look at this dataset, we can see there is year growth in this country is India and China that you have. Now, using this dataset, what we want to do is we want to examine the GDP growth rate trend of China. So you can see from this data, it goes from year 2000 to 2005. Okay, so that will be our main focus. So let's start. So let's create a simple line chart. Okay, so in this case, we come and say ggplot. Okay, now we have to pass in the data set. So in this case, it's GDP. So that is our data set. Okay, so we can also specify the aesthetics. What do we want on the x-axis? We want the year. And what do we want on the y-axis? We want to examine the GDP growth rate trend of China. Okay, so if you run this, you notice we have not added any geometric layer. So we come here and say, let us add the line. Okay, so let us add the line. So if you run this, now what will you observe here is that R is giving us an error. So we're getting this geom_path error. So it's telling us that each group consists of only one observation. So what we need to do here is we need to adjust the group aesthetics. Okay, so how can we do that? So to do that, you come here, right, and you say group equals 1. So what you do is inside aesthetic function, you will have to specify group equals 1 in order to solve this error message. Okay, so this geom_path error message. So if now you try to run this, so you are now getting your GDP growth rate trend, right? So this here is your line chart. Okay, so you observe here when you look into the GDP growth in China, it has been in an upward trend since 2001, right? So you can see it has been in an upward trend since 2001. Now let's try to see how can we modify this line chart to look a little bit much better. Okay, so let's first start by adding the color. Okay, so we're going to start by adding the color. Let's say we want to make the color to be blue. Let's run this. So our color is now blue, right? What you should also remember is that it should be outside the aesthetic function. Okay, so we can also modify the line type by making use of line type argument. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So you come in here and you say line type, okay, and then specify 2. So now you observe here that we have modified the line type, right? So we can also have additional line types here from 0 to 6. So if you specify 6, you notice now we can also specify 1, which is simply just a solid line. We can also specify 3, which is a dotted line, right? Specify 5. So you can see here is along dashed lines. Okay, but in this case, we want to simply just have an idea of the trend by making use of a line chart. We can also modify the width of the line by specifying size. Okay, so if you come here and you come and say the size, you want it to be 2, you notice we have modified the size. Okay, also notice that these are outside the aesthetic function, so do not forget that, right?